All right. Let's start by talking about HollywoodLife. Tell everybody what it is, what your audience reach is, who your audience is.
Okay, well, if you had asked me this a couple years ago, I would have said that HollywoodLife is a digital destination for young millennial women. And because the landscape has changed so much and just the whole ecosystem of the digital world has changed so much, I now would say that HollywoodLife is a content creator for young women in their 20s and 30s primarily. That's very much who we keep in mind when we're producing our content, but then we distribute our content through our direct site, and we have great audience there, but also through all multiple platforms, social media platforms and other new emerging platforms like Apple News, and of course we're on Flipboard and we're on some other news outlets, MSN and Yahoo, AOL, but then new emerging platforms. And so it's all about trying to get your content in front of the eyeballs of your audience.
And those are some of the challenges that we're going to be talking about now. What were some of the key points of evolution in this process? Because this is 10 years old now. It's going to be 10 years in November that HollywoodLife launched. What have been sort of the key changes along the way for you?
Well, there have been a lot of key changes. The first, of course, was launching, and I have to say that it was in a completely different world, really, and we were extremely lucky to launch into the fan obsession with the Twilight movies and the Twilight cast. And that gave us a great start because we were able to really imbue ourselves into the minds of the fans by covering Twilight. And then there was Tiger Woods. Thank you, Tiger, for having 18 different mistresses. And the phenomena of Tiger and Twilight got us off to this blast. And Twilight lasted for a few years. I mean, that was 5 movies. And so we really had to make a change to broaden our base of readers from those wild fans. And at that point, we also discovered, and this was a big inflection point, that our readers, of course, were not reading traditional sources of news or even going on television or cable to traditional news places like the New York Times, like CNN, like the Wall Street Journal. So we learned through covering kind of very large and actually kind of tragic events like Sandy Hook, the Boston Marathon, that we were the news source for our readers. They were already on HollywoodLife and they already trusted it, so that we needed to dive into covering news in a broader sense than just news that you would think of for young women in the entertainment and celebrity world. And from there, we covered the 2016 election in a very big way and really covered women's issues. And since then, that has become a key component, along with our core of entertainment, celebrities, fashion, and beauty. And in fact, we were very involved in the midterm elections and getting our readers to register to vote. And we paired with Michelle Obama's group When We All Vote. And so, because we have to take advantage of the fact that this is where young women's eyeballs are, and you can't try and train them to go to news sources that just don't feel right for them. Like if they're already on where you are, you've got to serve them everything that they need, even if it might seem like, oh, that's too heavy. No, it's important to help inform them and educate them. So that was a big inflection point. And finally, a redesign in 2016. Huge inflection point.
Why don't we take a look? Let's take a look at the site. And maybe, because I know that coming from the magazine world, one of the things that's really important to you is user experience.
Yes.
So I'm really, there we go. There we go. Tell us a little bit about the user experience that you're aiming for here, and how important that is to the site. Because then I want to talk about some of the decisions you made to maintain that.
So when we did the redesign, we wanted to continue to look feminine, look fun, look like be eye candy, be addictive, which were all things that our readers told us that we were, but be much cleaner than we had before. When we started out, we were really competing against a different sort of sites. Like they were more like personal blogs, like Perez Hilton and Pink is the New Black, things like that. But as we grew, we were competing against more traditional entertainment sites. And so we wanted to evolve and grow up our look and yet retain youthfulness. Mm-hmm. And we also wanted to be extremely easy to navigate. So we established separate channels for entertainment, fashion, beauty. And when we came to big award shows, which were huge for us, we'd have separate channels on the Oscars and on the BET Awards, which is coming up, would have its own separate channel, Super Bowl. So these things were very important. Then the other thing is that we also, as we continued to grow, really wanted to focus on more firsthand interviews and exclusives and on-the-record reporting. And let me see if I can get another slide.
There you go.
Okay. And so, really improve the quality of the content. So it wasn't just fun and informative, but it also gave our audience, which really cares a lot about in-depth information about the celebrities, the TV shows, the music stars that they love. We wanted to give them their own voices, to be able to hear these people on our site and to feature them. We also introduced, this is just an example of a new gallery that we introduced because, as you know, over the years, tech changes and develops, and we needed to get a faster loading gallery that was clearer, and anyway, this has done fantastic for us. We also introduced our own photography and our own photographers shooting exclusive portraits of the entertainers, the talent, and even, listen, we interview politicians and women who are, occasionally we will interview women entrepreneurs, things like that, so get great portraits of them. And I mean, here we have Lamar Odom, who came into our photo studio and did an exclusive interview with his new book. So there's an example of how we can blow that up on a section. And here are some of the channels that we developed when we were, in order to give better, more in-depth coverage, we set out to interview Oscar contenders, talent in front of the camera, behind the camera, featured in a special section. We did the Emmys. We just did the Tonys for the first time. And readers are just loving that, both that we are doing this and also that it's all aggregated for them in their own channels. And then this is showing you our Rock the Vote coverage. Of course, social media has been extremely important to us, and I would say that one of our biggest successes that we've worked really hard at is our YouTube channel, which has got over 2.7 million subscribers. And it took a lot of tinkering to figure out the exact type of videos that would work for us. Because, and we learned things like you can't expect in your YouTube channel to do, like, you can't do hair and makeup videos if what your audience really expects from you is great news, entertainment news. We found that YouTube's kind of segmented that way, that if you're going to do a makeup, how to put on your makeup, then your content better all be about how to put on your makeup. And anyway, this has got something like 1.7 billion views at this point.
You also get a different audience on YouTube?
Yes. Yeah. And that's another thing we learned, is that it is definitely a different demographic that is going to YouTube. For us, it's the younger end of our audience, more the 18 to 24-year-old part of our fan base. But the other thing too is that there's a group of celebrities who are just YouTube celebrities, and we found that while many of them wouldn't cross over into interest on our site, covering YouTube celebrities on celebrities on YouTube has really worked well for us, and we've developed great relationships with Logan Paul, and
so YouTube as a medium has created its own celebrity culture, and
exactly.
now you have discovered as a celebrity news outlet, this is a place to cover, both be in it, but also cover it, and it's a whole new world. It's a world unto itself.
And it's interesting because you can cross over with other YouTube stars. Logan Paul's up there, but he's had us on his podcast. We cover his antics. Mm-hmm. He's called us out in his videos, so it's really fun to and we do that with some of the other YouTube celebrities as well.
Let's talk about the distribution challenges, because one of the things you've said to me a number of times lately is you would not want to have to do this now. What you did 10 years ago, you would not want to have to start this now. And part of it is the distribution challenge that you're facing. Let's talk a little bit about, for instance, your main channels of distribution and how they've evolved recently.
Well, I would say that for us starting 10 years ago, and I think for anybody who started 10, 12, even 15 years ago, at this point, it's like ancient history, but it was very much like the Wild West, and that anybody who had a voice and a computer could start their own website or blog, and they could get placement in Google. Google was more focused on who was putting things up quickly, and who had, I don't know what their algorithm does, but like an interesting story about this or that. So there was a lot of opportunity for startups, and you saw a lot of startups of personal blogs that were just powered by one person with maybe a couple of people on their team, and they could do quite well. And I think that because of just so many factors, that algorithms have changed significantly, and I think in many ways it's good because the Google algorithm, and Google do great on organic search and also on mobile search. We do really great on that, but I think that Google has made a concerted effort in the last few years to not surface news sources that really are not legitimate. Mm-hmm. And I think that a startup could get caught in that kind of an algorithm change because they haven't built authority and expertise on the web. So I think that's what would make it a lot harder for them, whereas it was such a free-for-all before. And I think in many ways, though, the change is important because if you're a legitimate news source like we are, it can be very helpful. But
it also changes another thing that it does is it actually changes your competitive set.
Yes.
Doesn't that? I think that's a really fascinating part to this that you've discovered, is how the algorithms that are also helping to bring up and favor more respectable sources are actually putting you into a different competitive set than you're used to.
Well, again, when we started out, we were competing against a lot of smaller blogs that are getting higher placement. Today, we are in more of a traditional set of competing against People, Us Weekly, E-Online, TMZ. When you think about who are the big entertainment celebrity news sources, we are in that mix, which is a good thing, but it is different than when we started. But the other thing that is kind of interesting too is that you find yourself competing against very well-known legacy news brands that are not really entertainment sources, and yet because they are so they get high ranking in the ecosystem, we can find ourselves trying to compete for a top slot on a Bachelorette recap with the Washington Post,
right?
Which is like, what? I can assure you, young women are not going to the Washington Post to read about the Bachelorette, but because listen, algorithms aren't perfect, but you can find yourself in competition against some of the Goliaths who just have the resources to have very broad coverage.
Yeah, and the algorithms are not necessarily favoring expertise. And again, this would make it especially
not
hard.
in a sort of a core interest.
Exactly. So you couldn't build. It'd be harder and harder. It'd be harder now to build that legitimacy simply by having expertise without necessarily that pre-existing brand. to help drive it. Now, you also found, I wanted to mention that, because you mentioned that you got a lot of good traction when you started broadening some of your topics and started recognizing that young women were coming to your site, and you could talk to them about a host of things. But you also made a number of decisions about what not to talk to. There were certain verticals that you dispensed with after a while, right? Tell us about those decisions.
Well, I think that as a news provider and as a way of growing, we would find that our readers are coming to us for a lot, so we would test out different areas. Let's say we did fantastic, and we have continued to do fantastic with Super Bowl coverage. So we thought, maybe we could do well in the sports space. And we took a delve for a while into that category, covering things like the NBA Finals, which were last night. But we found that, yeah, the Super Bowl works really well, but there's so much of a celebrity and entertainment element to it. And that the NBA Finals, for us, will only work well if you've got celebrities. Like our Drake stories did great, including one last night about how worried he was about that the Golden State Warriors were going to end up winning the game, and about Ayesha Curry and Steph Curry and his daughter. Like that celebrity angle would work for us. However, the straight, we couldn't compete in the straight sports coverage. I think that we're going to do well as the women's soccer tournament continues, because again, there's the women care about female celebrity athletes. They admire them, they know them, and so they're not just sports stars. They are celebrities in their own rank, so that can work well. So that's one example of went down the road, learned what worked out of it, and we're continuing to build on that, but what didn't make sense. I mean, listen, we're a small team. You have to focus your resources where you get the most bang.
Another thing that you did was you, unlike a lot of sites in your category, you tried e-commerce and then decided against it. Tell us about that experience and what your thinking was about including e-commerce as part of the revenue mix.
Well, we saw other sites doing e-commerce and doing affiliate links, and it's just like sports. We thought, okay, let's dip our toe into the water, see what we can do and what we can learn. And this was probably about 3 years ago at this point, maybe a little longer. And what we found is that it's very difficult to convince or to take a reader that's coming to you for editorial and for news and to then change their intent to actually buy something. Because most people, when they think about, hey, I want to go shopping, women, I want to find shoes or a purse or a dress, their first instinct is not to go to an editorial site. The first instinct is going to go to an e-commerce site. And there's just so much more that e-commerce site can offer. They go right to Amazon. And so the first job is trying to change complete reader behavior. And that, I think, is really challenging, and we found that. And though we worked on it and tried different things, we did affiliate links, we ended up feeling like the amount of work that we were putting in to generate a certain amount of revenue, that was not worth the distraction for us, again, as a small team, from doing great content that was a natural for our readers. That's what they were coming for. And I think, sometimes maybe we'll revisit it down the road, but I've seen some editorial competitors to appear to me to have pretty much changed from editorial sites to e-commerce sites. And that's a decision that they appear to have made. And I guess if you're going to go all in, then eventually you could change and you could start to rank as an e-commerce site.
Right.
We weren't ranking as an e-commerce site. So we had the two things against us, intent and not ranking.
I want to talk a little bit more about distribution, since it's core to what you're doing, and the social channels really started becoming challenging, especially Facebook, but others. And one of the things that we discussed a while ago was how you started tapping secondary channels, secondary social channels, and you've actually found some traction outside of Facebook. Apple News, for instance.
Yes, I would advise anybody who's in the editorial news business to diversify as much as they can, because you don't have control over your platforms of distribution. And your biggest platforms are Google, and for a lot of editorial outlets, Facebook was massive. And fortunately, at HollywoodLife, we had always diversified. We never had all our eggs in one basket. We never counted on Facebook. So when Facebook decided to not put media content into people's feeds the way that they had, it was something that we were able to cope with. And so we have been really open to looking at other platforms. We already had Yahoo and AOL, MSN, but Apple News is, we were an early, what do you call it, adopter. We got involved with them quite a while ago, and it's been a fantastic place to showcase editorial and to have readership. And we've really built an audience there, and it's great for the brand. Monetizing it, it's been much more difficult, but we are getting some monetization from it now. And I've been talking to a lot of the people here about that. I think a lot of us are very hopeful and are trying new things to try and increase that. But I think as a brand, it is important to have your content out there in front of as many eyeballs as you can. We've also, Flipboard has been a good partner for us in terms of brand exposure, and they send us traffic. There's some new apps, like a Newsbreak.app, Smart News, which we're working with and are nice.
Let's talk about the monetization side and how that's evolved for you. How are you, how and where
also,
are you? Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but Facebook has been improving lately. But I don't want to count on it, but...
In terms of just raw traffic? Or,
yeah, as a traffic source.
Anybody else seeing that? Yes? One? One?
Well, it's too bad because we've had such, the readers that come to our page, we get really strong engagement, and our videos do incredible on Facebook and have continued to. So it is such a shame, the change that they initiated a while ago, because as for all the talk about it, people still very much comment and get involved, and you can be back and forth with your audience there.
Let's talk, I want to talk about monetization, but let's fold it into a discussion about how this has evolved, because you're a part of Penske Media. And now Penske has acquired another property and is starting to reorganize things. So tell us how that's evolving and how that's going to evolve the monetization side.
Well, this was a very exciting development for us at HollywoodLife. At Penske, we have had a lot of fantastic more business-to-business brands like Variety and Women's Wear Daily. And we acquired a new company. Well, it's not a new company, but for us it's new. We acquired She Knows, which has the She Knows brand, Stylecaster, and the Blog Her network. And so it was another female consumer group, and HollywoodLife is just so happy now to have a sister that's female consumer. And what we've done with the company is create a She Media division. It's our first division at Penske that we've had, and we are part of that now. And what that has done is give us access to their direct sales team, because HollywoodLife has not had a direct ad sales team. We monetized and became profitable on programmatic advertising and on ad networks. And so now we have the added element of an actual direct sales team and improved programmatic, and we're seeing the results start to come in, and it's extremely exciting. And also just to be able to kind of cross-pollinate each other, not that we share editorial, but that we now are working on some events together. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to grow the brand as part of She Media.
I want to give all of you a chance to ask Bonnie any questions if you have them. All right. I want to wrap with something in particular that really popped for me in looking at your site and talking to to you and your staff. The ways in which you're treating podcasting, as in terms of formats, some of the changes you've made in the last couple of years with podcasts, and just simply the way that you actually are treating them as content.
Yes. So we started a podcast, I guess, about 3 years ago, maybe longer. And for us, again, not having a direct sales team, it's not been something that we monetized until we are now going out there and starting to now. However, we have found it a tremendous way to get talent in. There's a lot of talent that likes to talk in a podcast. It's a much more relaxed format for an interview. And what we've been able to do is to use it as a source of content creation. So when we have somebody come in, we videotape the actual podcast that we can cut into an exciting video that we can post on Facebook and YouTube and use on the posts that we're going to write out of the podcast. And from the podcast interview, we at least get 2 stories, great news stories that are unique to us or news breaking, and we then write them up, put them on the site, and we have the video to go in, and we always get a great portrait because we have our photographers there to do exclusive portraits. And so we're able to take the podcast and then create a lot of content that is showcased on the site and on our social media channels. Plus, we could tap into their social networks because we ask them to promote the stories, the podcast itself. And so that's been
you're
great
giving
too.
them, and you're giving these celebrities assets.
Oh, yeah.
The photo shoot is providing them with assets that they can then use in their social channels.
Yes, they love it. Yes.
I guess what really popped for me about this is that I covered podcasting for many years, and one of my complaints about it as a medium is that publishers have kept it in a ghetto, an audio ghetto, that it's a separate channel, it's hard even to find at the site, it's rarely ever referenced in the rest of the content. And I think what's interesting about what you're doing is the way you're seeing it as a content center, and you're wrapping around it all the different multimedia you're already doing and extracting from that one interview all of these other assets.
Exactly.
So that, arguably it would be nice to monetize it. You don't even need to monetize it because you've got all of these other things you're doing with it.
Right, and they're getting monetized,
right,
because we're monetizing our posts, we're monetizing our videos, so we are getting monetization out of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Bonnie Fuller, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck with this.